When the legendary UCLA basketball coach John Wooden was asked to describe the ideal player, he stated this, quote, "I would have the player be a good student, polite, courteous, a good team player, defensive player, rebounder, inside player, and outside player." Why not just take Jamaal Wilkes and let it go at that? Well, today's guest was a two-time All-American, two-time NCAA, and four-time NBA champ. We'll let it go just at that. My pleasure to welcome to the set the Basketball Hall of Famer, Mr. Jamaal Wilkes. Good to see you again, fella.
Great to see you, James.
And you know, I always have, every time I see or talk to Jamaal, I always go back to the same old story, dusting off the cobwebs. So he was being sought after by over 200 colleges around the country, came to Harvard for a visit, Harvard and Penn, by the way, in the Ivy League. And I'm thinking we have a shot at you. I said, Jamaal, what do you think? And you told me what about the East Coast?
It's too cold.
You couldn't handle the Boston winters?
Well, now you got to keep in mind, I'm a Southern California boy. So I grew up in the sunshine, and I was thrilled to be at Harvard. I couldn't believe I was there. And then to meet you and Floyd and all the guys, I mean, you made me feel so welcome, but yeah, it was just too cold and a little too far away from home.
No question.
I like to see my mom and dad once in a while, and it was just a little too far.
Baseball was actually your first love. Talk to me about baseball.
Yeah, it was, James. My dad had spent some time in the minor Negro leagues and really loved baseball. And he would take my brother and I out and give us batting practice. And I was a pretty good little player. I mean, I was a contact hitter. I wasn't a really long ball hitter, but going into high school, it came where I had to make a choice between baseball or have a chance to make the varsity as a sophomore, which in this little town, Ventura, was a big deal. I'd known the coach since I was 8 or 9 years old, and he just explained to me, hey, you got to let baseball go. And I took a chance at it, and it turned out pretty good.
Any hero that you liked as a basketball player early on that you either tried to pattern your game after, or that person?
Well, I really admired Elgin Baylor. Wow. Now, you know, I didn't have hang time like Elgin, Elgin. I couldn't pattern my game after him.
A beast.
A beast.
Did you even think early on that UCLA could be in the picture for you collegiately?
You know, I wasn't sure. I knew they were winning a lot, and they were right down the road, about 100 miles from where I grew up. Coach Wooden was one of the few coaches who didn't offer me anything except a chance to play basketball at UCLA and a good college education if I went to class. You know, everyone else was really talking nonsense, and my mother was just really fell in love with Coach Wooden's no-nonsense style. And in the end, the lure of Coach Wooden just became too attractive. I grew up in a household that kind of prepared me for Coach Wooden. And so the lure of him, although I really liked SC, and USC was rocking at the time. Once I passed on Harvard and Penn.
Got to get that in there. Yeah, absolutely. Which we regretted big time, of course.
You know, it's interesting. I've often wondered what could have happened, but in the end, it was Coach Wooden that made the difference for me.
Being California bound, how much more blessed could you be? Here with the Hall of Famer who the Lakers' famous broadcaster Chick Hearn said shot 20-foot layups. Jamaal Wilkes recalls that as a 12-year-old player going against older guys, quote, he said, I developed a technique of holding the ball behind my head and releasing it at the very last second to prevent my shot from being blocked. He said, I didn't realize I was shooting the ball differently from anyone else. And that was a unique shot because, Jamaal, I'm sure you probably know many coaches who like to consider themselves a shot doctor would say that was a little unorthodox, but they couldn't mess with you because you were so accurate with it.
No, they couldn't. I didn't know I was doing anything different throughout high school. And when I got to UCLA, first week of practice with the varsity with Coach Wooden, he calls me over after practice. Keith, come here. And I'm petrified. It was so quiet at his practices, sometimes you could hear a pin drop almost. You're just hanging on every word he said. And so I go over there and he says, now, Keith, I want you to shoot baskets around the key, and I'm going to rebound for you. I was stunned. Coach Wooden's going to rebound
for you.
He didn't call one of the other coaches or the assistant, one of the other players. And so I'm shooting shots, and I'm drilling it because the man's watching me, you know. As far as I'm concerned, my whole life is on the line. And what I remember, every pass he made me was just a perfect pass. crisp pass. That's what always stuck out in my mind. And I remember thinking, wow, I could play with this guy, you know. So after I made about 90%, he said, now, how did you shoot that? And I'm confused because he just saw me make all these shots.
But yet he asked you.
He asked me. And he had me demonstrate it. And I said, well, coach, you know, I just kind of, you know, do this, do that, do that, do this. And he says, does the ball leave your fingertips? Does it have the good reverse spin? And he rolls the ball out and it comes back to him. And I said, well, sure, coach. And he says, okay, you're dismissed. And years later, we laughed about it. He said he thought about changing my shot, but he could see I was so comfortable with it. And my start and my finish was textbook. It was just what happened in between. And, you know, I was making a high percentage, so he left me alone. But I often credit him for not messing with my shot, for being big enough, you know, to accept something different, something unorthodox.
And I was going to break that down for those who may not be basketball savvy. Jamaal, that was awesome, as opposed to criticizing you or even demonstrating differently how you ought to shoot it according to orthodoxy.
Right.
He saw you go through the drill, make all the shots, and decided not to mess with it. That's pretty big.
Yeah, I thought so too. It was huge, and I didn't realize at the time. You know, I was just like glad it was over and went on. You know, and then but years later, I reflected on it, and man, that was really big.
And without getting too esoteric, when he asked you about did it have the backspin on the basketball, he was asking you that for the purpose of?
The fingertips.
Off the fingertips.
Yeah, off the fingertips. So he kind of like walked me through the important parts, and we, you know, visualized and went through it together, and then he decided to leave me alone.
A lot of what he talked about clearly had applications in the game of life. We want to pick your brains on that as well, too, because, again, you have been such an icon in the game of life in terms of how you've influenced people that you've played with and worked with after basketball. And we'll get into that a little bit more as Jamaal Wilkes talks about the great John Wooden after this. Other than his father, Jamaal Wilkes got the best advice in life from John Wooden, who he calls, quote, one of the finest men God put on this earth and the greatest basketball coach in history. Among his favorite Wooden quotes are: 1, I don't want activity without achievement. 2, do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And his favorite, make each day your masterpiece. Meaning?
It just excited me to challenge myself to try and make the day, each day, the best day of my life. And even when I wasn't feeling well or things weren't going as I thought they should or what have you. And so it encourages one to go inside oneself and think about these things and then try and, you know, demonstrate them in the world.
And on the court, you indeed played with some masterpieces as well. Talk about some of the guys you played with, UCLA, Lakers, and how they were masterpieces that you blended so well with, Jamaal.
I played in college with a great center, Bill Walton, and of course with the Lakers, Kareem, and they're arguably two of the greatest centers ever, and arguably, you know, the best two centers out of UCLA, the two dominant players out of UCLA. And Bill Walton was just, in college, and even now, but he was just so much fun. He was very gregarious. He grew up with brothers, so he liked that element, you know, socializing with the guys, and always been smart off the court, but on the court, just a terrific player. And the one thing he does, Kareem had his sky hook. It was his signature move, which is arguably the greatest shot in basketball. But what Walton did that I think was his signature move, I don't know what he thinks, but what I think, he jumped from his calves, first of all, so he didn't have to bend and gather himself to jump. He jumped real quick. He'd go up, grab the ball in mid-air, and turn in one motion and fire the ball to half court. I have not seen anyone else do that. Wes Unseld came close.
I was going to say, Wes Unseld came close, okay.
Kevin Love comes close, but their feet touch the ground, and they turn quick. They do pivot quick. Walton turns in midair
In the air.
and fired that thing to half court. It was just phenomenal. Then going on to the pros with Golden State, played with Rick Barry. And one of the two questions I got asked the most before entering the pros, the first one was, how are you going to survive the rigors being, I was 190 on a good day back then. The second question was, how are you, a John Wooden protege, going to get along with a guy like Rick Barry, who was very vocal and known to be very expressive, brilliant basketball player. Rick taught me a lot. We're friends to this day. I mean, the guys brought me in and helped me learn the game. Then, of course, going to the Lakers, and then Dr. Bus buys the team. He drafts Magic, the birth of Showtime, and I'm still pinching myself, James. I can't believe I was doing that, playing with these guys. Yes, fun times. It was pressure. I mean, but we all expected that. And one thing about when you get with great people who do have great talent and big egos, but because they're good people, we figure out a way to get along. We figure out a way to get through it. I mean, Showtime was it was art. It was.
It was art, and it was fun for us to watch. And more with Jamaal Wilkes after this. Playing alongside such great players as Jamaal just got finished talking about, like Bill Walton, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Rick Barry, and Magic Johnson, Brother Wilkes was happy when he went unnoticed. I want to find out if that's actually the case, because he was called the silent assassin, as his Lakers coach Paul Westhead called you before. Was that, I guess, an accurate description of how you went about it? And did you truly like going unnoticed?
I learned at a young age, the most important stat for me, James, was winning. Now within winning, I would hope to, score well and rebound well and defend and all that and have good stats. But that was the most important stat to me. And I learned that in junior high school when we played, another junior high school, and everyone was anticipating the big matchup. And they just had a better team than our team. It was just me and, 4 guys, and they had some good players, and they beat us. And I had to hear all summer, about how their guy and this, that, and the other. And I thought about that a lot, and I realized that the most important stat was winning, because that's all people care about. And so the silent assassin, I liked it. And although I didn't get the recognition perhaps that some of my other teammates got, frankly, I was okay with it, because the recognition came from the mass media. I got it from my peers and from the organizations I was playing with. So I was very comfortable, and personality-wise, James, I'm more reserved, actually. So I was cool with just, blending in, and I did play with some great players. But you need to play with great players to win.
Bottom line. But yeah. Jamaal, but check this out. The jacket that you're wearing, that's at the apex as a basketball player. So in terms of a message to those who are watching, the youngsters out there, what does it say about your life and the way you played the game, that you translated into the game of life, that you still got the ultimate recognition? Yeah,
well, I hope the message that it sends to young people out there is that there are multiple ways to skin a cat. And so I think what I was really good at was identifying, assessing the team's situation, the team's needs, and being adaptable to adjust and add value. And I think that's something that I did really well. For instance, when I played at Golden State, when we played at UCLA, the ball generally came through me to start the offense. And we played at Golden State. Rick Barry, was an offensive forward, had the ball a lot, and it was grooming me to become more of a ball handler. And so I handled the ball some. When I got to the Lakers, it was a different story. Number one, Kareem was down at the post, and you know how that when you have a dominant post player, it gets busy in there, and you got to throw it in all the time. And then we had Norm Nixon, eventually Magic Johnson, Byron Scott, Cooper, Michael Cooper, great guards. And so I didn't have to handle the ball much. So I learned how to focus on playing without the ball offensively. And And also, you know, I was known as a scorer, but I tried to do other things. Even when my shot wasn't falling, I tried to play rebound, play defense to give the coach reasons to keep me out there. And so I'm comfortable with the silent assassin, yeah.
Back with more of Jamaal Wilkes after this. Yeah. The Hall of Famer Jamaal Wilkes wrote in his autobiography, Memoirs of the Original Smooth as Silk, that long ago he dedicated himself to winning without being flashy. Well, he is one of only 5 men to win multiple NCAA and NBA titles, and check out the list, which includes the likes of Bill Russell, Casey Jones, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Bill Walton. Folks, that might never happen again. So now in the game of life, those activities that keep you meaningfully engaged and excited include what?
Well, I'm putting a adult fantasy basketball camp together next May. I missed the game, but I don't miss the pressures of winning and losing. So that'll be a fun project. Then I do some promotional and marketing stuff for the Lakers or the Golden State or the NBA occasionally, but that's what kind of keeps me going.
Because of the quality guests that we've been blessed to have on this program, that there's a good backstory that prayerfully we've pulled out of you, but a message that you would have for young people as well too, because in a society right now where there's so much divisiveness in the public square, profane language and the like, which kind of grates me, what would your message be to young people in particular?
Well, James, thank you for asking that. And I want to just say it's been an honor to be on your show. You know, we've known each other a long time, and you've always held yourself to the highest standard. Now, having said that, my personal message to young people, I think, you know, there's so many pressures and expectations. I mean, globally, when we were growing up, you know, we had to compete with kids in America. Now it's globally. And, you know, with social media, you know, you make one misstep and it's blown up. You know, I like to deal with failure, and I like to say to people that you can fail without being a failure. You know, it's not the end of the world. You know, you don't need to go out and commit suicide or do anything drastic. It's okay. It's okay. Just, you know, stick with it, stay in there, and learn from your failures. And I think that's the key point about failure, is the opportunity to learn, to improve, and not go out and do something destructive to yourself or to others. So that's a real focus for me, because I just see the pressure and the expectations that these young people are under. I have 3 kids, you know, they're all in the 30s now, but you know, you can fail without being a failure, and learn from it.
So when you did fall, if you will, you got back up, whether it was in the game of basketball or the game of life, you continued to persevere to succeed.
James, I have fallen many times. I have failed many times. It just wasn't on camera. You can't ever quit. When you quit, you lose. You just got to keep picking yourself up and, you know, suck it up, take the hit, and just try and do better, try and learn, try and, or shift gears and take your mind off of it and come back to it.
If I may lovingly put a period on that, it reminds me when you talk about failure, the late great motivational speaker Zig Ziglar, who said that failure is an event, not a person. So continue, and you know what? Looking at the person that you have always been and still are, Jamaal, one of the class acts. God bless you and continue success in what you're doing as well.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so that wraps up this week's show. Folks, join us next week for another edition of The James Brown Show.